You had your golden opportunity if you joined the arbitration, and you would have told the whole world your position, but you chose not to.
All right.
Maybe you would have lost.
In the churning waters of the West Philippine Sea, the images have become hauntingly familiar. China Coast Guard CCG vessels towering over smaller Philippine ships, firing powerful jets of water that tear through hulls and send Filipino sailors scrambling for safety. The latest incident, on October 12, 2025, near Thitu Island, Pagasa, saw the CCG ship bow number 2159 unleash multiple high-pressure water blasts and then ram the stern of the Philippine government fisheries vessel BRP Datu Pagbuwaya, leaving it damaged and several crew members injured. The episode, one of many in a growing pattern of intimidation, highlights China's increasingly aggressive gray zone tactics, operations that stop short of war but are meant to wear down Manila's will and assert de facto control over contested waters. And yet, despite enduring repeated attacks, the Philippines has never retaliated in kind. No water cannons fired back, no show of non-lethal revenge at sea. To many observers, this restraint might seem puzzling, even frustrating, but within Manila's national security and foreign policy circles, this is no act of passivity. It is, in fact, a deliberate act of statecraft, a carefully calibrated policy rooted in strategic logic, asymmetric awareness, and diplomatic foresight.
In accordance with international and Philippine national laws, we are proceeding according to our planned route.
The Philippines' refusal to engage in reciprocal tactics is designed to de-escalate tensions, preserve the moral and legal high ground, and reinforce its credibility before the international community. As President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. put it, "We will not follow the Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese vessels down that road. Our mission is to lower tensions, not raise them. We will never fire water cannons." This is the heart of the Philippines' strategic rationale, to avoid escalation that could spiral beyond control. In an environment where one misstep could trigger a larger confrontation involving China's People's Liberation Army, PLA, Navy, restraint is not weakness. It is prudence born of realism. The Philippine Coast Guard, PCG, and Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, BFAR, operate with limited assets, while China commands the world's largest Coast Guard fleet. Vessels that are not only heavily armed and militarized, but often reinforced by a maritime militia of disguised fishing boats. Some Chinese CCG ships displace over 10,000 tons, dwarfing the PCG's 97-meter multi-role response vessels, like the BRP Teresa Magbanua. In such an asymmetric power dynamic, any attempt at direct confrontation, even with water cannons, risks exposing Philippine crews to disproportionate retaliation, unnecessary casualties, and the possibility of open escalation. Instead, Manila relies on a more powerful tool: diplomatic and alliance leverage. The 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, MDT, with the United States provides a powerful deterrent framework, with Washington repeatedly affirming that any armed attack on Philippine forces, aircraft, or vessels in the South China Sea would trigger U.S. defense commitments. However, water cannon incidents, though dangerous, fall under the category of non-lethal harassment. By choosing not to retaliate, the Philippines prevents China from reinterpreting these acts as provocations that could justify escalation or allow Beijing to claim self-defense. It also prevents a scenario that could force the U.S. into an immediate crisis under the MDT, a move neither Manila nor Washington desires. In essence, the Philippines' restraint keeps China diplomatically isolated, ensuring that every act of aggression remains China's problem, not Manila's responsibility. This strategy is amplified by the Philippine Coast Guard's Transparency Initiative, a deliberate policy of documenting and publicizing every act of Chinese aggression. Through high-definition footage, verified reports, and real-time releases, the Philippines has weaponized truth itself, turning China's coercion into a global spectacle of illegality. Each documented attack fuels international condemnation from allies such as Japan, Australia, South Korea, the European Union, and the United States, building a coalition of diplomatic and political pressure around Beijing. Instead of responding with water cannons, the Philippines responds with evidence, and this evidence strengthens its moral and strategic standing in the global arena. Thus, the Philippines' restraint is not passive. It is strategic discipline in action. By refusing to retaliate, Manila preserves its image as a responsible maritime actor, protects its citizens from disproportionate harm, and reinforces the central narrative of its cause, that it stands for law, order, and peaceful resolution in the face of coercion. Its weapons are moral authority, the 2016 arbitral ruling, and the solidarity of allies, tools that carry far greater global impact than any burst of water at sea. In conclusion, the Philippines' choice not to fight back with water cannons represents a masterclass in restraint and strategic patience. It recognizes the asymmetric power gap and the futility of direct escalation, while transforming every Chinese act of aggression into diplomatic ammunition. Through lawfare, transparency, and alliances, Manila has managed to rally global opinion, reaffirm the 2016 ruling, and expose Beijing's coercion without firing a single shot or a single stream of water. In the West Philippine Sea, the Philippines proves that true strength lies not in matching power for power, but in mastering the balance between defiance and discipline. It is defending sovereignty not with force, but with principle, and in doing so, winning a far larger battle for legitimacy, peace, and the rule of law. The Philippines' decision not to retaliate with water cannons against Chinese vessels in the West Philippine Sea is a calculated act of restraint rooted in both strategic prudence and military reality. The use of water cannons, though technically non-lethal, carries immense symbolic weight. It would mark a shift from passive defense to active confrontation, a move that could easily be interpreted by Beijing as escalation and justify a harsher, potentially armed response. As President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. emphasized in May 2024, the Philippines will not follow the Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese vessels down that road. Our mission is to lower tensions, not raise them. We will never fire water cannons. This statement captures the essence of Manila's restraint, avoiding the red line that could transform gray zone confrontations into open conflict. Beyond diplomacy, there is also a hard power calculation at play. China commands the world's largest Coast Guard fleet, operating ships displacing 10,000 tons or more, such as the Haijing-class vessels, which are equipped with reinforced hulls, military-grade sensors, and water cannons powerful enough to shatter steel railings or disable smaller ships. In contrast, the Philippine Coast Guard's largest vessels, like the 97-meter BRP Teresa Magbanua, are lightly armed, multi-role response ships primarily designed for humanitarian and patrol missions, not force-on-force engagements. In a purely physical contest, any attempt at reciprocity would expose smaller Philippine vessels to severe damage, casualties, or even sinking. Thus, the Philippines' refusal to engage in water cannon exchanges reflects asymmetric strategy in practice, a conscious effort to preserve the initiative by denying China the escalation it seeks. By staying disciplined, Manila keeps Beijing's provocations in the spotlight of global scrutiny, transforming every act of Chinese aggression into an exhibit of bullying behavior rather than mutual hostility. The Philippines' greatest weapon, in this sense, is not water pressure, but moral pressure, maintaining the legal, diplomatic, and psychological high ground in one of the world's most volatile maritime theaters. For Manila, restraint in the West Philippine Sea is not simply about avoiding confrontation. It is a deliberate, diplomatic maneuver designed to maximize alliance leverage and keep the conflict within the boundaries of international law, where the Philippines enjoys overwhelming support. At the center of this strategy is the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, MDT, with the United States, a decades-old pact that guarantees U.S. assistance in the event of an armed attack on Philippine forces, aircraft, or vessels. American officials, from the State Department to the Pentagon, have repeatedly and publicly confirmed that the treaty applies to Philippine public vessels, including Coast Guard and Navy units, operating anywhere in the South China Sea. This commitment creates what analysts call an MDT buffer, a strategic safety net that deters China from crossing the line into overt warfare, while also restraining the Philippines from taking actions that could trigger escalation. While China's use of water cannons is viewed internationally as non-lethal harassment, any retaliatory use by the Philippines could hand Beijing a pretext for escalation, potentially justifying the deployment of armed assets or direct military intervention under the guise of self-defense. Such a move could spiral rapidly, risking a confrontation that would force the U.S. to respond under the MDT, a scenario neither Washington nor Manila wants to provoke. By avoiding tit-for-tat escalation, the Philippines ensures that China remains the clear aggressor in the eyes of the world, while the alliance remains a credible but untriggered deterrent force in the background. This strategy is reinforced by the wave of international outcry and solidarity that follows every aggressive Chinese act. Repeated water cannon incidents, including those near Thitu Island, Second Thomas Shoal, and Bajo de Masinloc, have drawn strong condemnation from Manila's allies and partners, including the United States, Japan, Australia, the European Union, and South Korea. Each statement of grave concern or condemnation of unlawful coercion amplifies the Philippines' diplomatic standing and isolates China's actions as violations of international norms. The key to this approach is the Philippine Coast Guard's Transparency Initiative, the systematic release of verified footage and reports documenting each incident. This policy has become one of Manila's most potent non-military tools, transforming each act of Chinese coercion into a public relations setback for Beijing and a rallying point for global support. By meticulously recording, verifying, and publicizing every episode of harassment, from ramming incidents to blocked resupply missions, the Philippines has effectively reframed the conflict. It is no longer just about contested reefs and shoals, but about the principle of lawful conduct at sea. In sum, Manila's restraint is not inaction. It is strategic discipline backed by alliance architecture and global sympathy. By refusing to retaliate, the Philippines keeps China boxed into the role of aggressor, while rallying the world around its cause. This approach converts moral legitimacy and diplomatic pressure into soft power deterrence, leveraging the weight of allies and the rule of law as shields in place of water cannons. The Philippines' decision not to retaliate with water cannons in the West Philippine Sea is far from a show of weakness. It is a carefully calibrated act of strategy, restraint, and realism. This approach stems from an understanding of three interlocking truths. First, that China's overwhelming advantage in firepower and fleet size makes symmetrical responses militarily and politically counterproductive. Second, that adherence to international law and non-escalation sustains the Philippines' credibility and moral high ground. And third, that every act of discipline strengthens Manila's diplomatic leverage, ensuring that the world sees Beijing's actions for what they are: coercion and intimidation. In this sense, restraint is not passivity, but prudence, a recognition that winning the larger strategic contest requires outsmarting, not outmatching, a superior adversary. Ultimately, the Philippines has chosen to fight with legitimacy, not weaponry. Its arms in this conflict are moral authority, global partnerships, and the rule of law, embodied in the 2016 arbitral tribunal ruling that invalidated China's sweeping claims. By using these tools, Manila is asserting sovereignty without surrendering peace, ensuring that the defense of national waters does not come at the cost of regional stability. This strategy turns every Chinese provocation into diplomatic ammunition, and every documented incident into evidence before the court of global opinion. In the long game of the South China Sea, where restraint can be more powerful than retaliation, the Philippines is showing that true strength lies in principle and persistence. Rather than meeting force with force, it aims to enforce the 2016 ruling through sustained diplomatic pressure, international consensus, and alliance coordination, compelling compliance not through confrontation, but through global accountability. In doing so, Manila continues to uphold the core message that defines its struggle: sovereignty defended with law, not war. strength proven through restraint, not retaliation. If you liked the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.